We don't have a whole lot happening within our game quite yet. We've got a start button disappears, and we run a block of code in the function called makeItem. Let's set up some more additional functionality. So we want to get the boundary of our main container. So getting that container object, we're going to use getBoundingClientRectangle. This is a method that gives you the parameters of an element. And if I paste that into the console, you're going to see that whenever we hit start, we get the bounding client rectangle. So this is the full space that we have to work with. We've got the bottom, the height, the left, the right, the top, and the width. So this is that whole gameplay area. Next, we need to create an element and randomly create an element and position it somewhere on the page. So using document element create element, creating a div. And then for this div, we're going to set all of its properties dynamically with JavaScript. So adding in to that div, updating its style attributes, we can set a position of absolute. So that will allow us to position that element. And I'll console log it out so that we can see the element as we're constructing it. So there we've got our element. We've got a style of position absolute. And that means that we need to also position it. So we need to do a left position. And this can be math random. And the random value, when we take math random, we need to multiply it by the number that we want to randomize it by. And we already have some values that we can utilize here that are available within our boundary object. So taking that boundary width plus pix, that will give us a position, a left position that we can use. And then also taking boundary height. This is all coming from that boundary object that we're showing here on the right hand side. And this can be boundary top. So that will set the vertical position. We're setting the horizontal position. And we also need to set some random width and height for that. So doing a style and width. So we're generating all of the properties, the attributes, the style attributes that are available for this element dynamically within this function. So anywhere from 10, so we'll start it out at 40, and we'll have a randomizer of 10. So it could be anywhere from 40 to 50 wide, and we'll do the same for height. So this could be as well anywhere from 40 to 50 wide. So the height and the width will change. Position of left and right will change. Also, let's set up a border radius to it. So again, using that style value, we can set border radius. We've got a lot of options within JavaScript in order to set the same thing that you would expect to see when you are creating that within your CSS as well. We can also set our cursor. So the cursor value, so setting that to a pointer. And it probably is easier to do it in CSS, but of course this is a JavaScript course, so we want to really focus on JavaScript. Another one that we want to do is maybe do a background color. So this is expecting a hex value. So make sure that we put the hash in front, and we're going to generate a random hex value number. So doing math random, and then to string and base 16, and then we're going to substring that minusing 6. So that will return back a hex value. So I'll show you how that works within the console. So if we take math random, we get a decimal, 0 decimal, and a whole bunch of digits after that. If I take math random and if I do to string, see that it turns it into a string. And I can change the base for the string. So if I do base 16, it's going to create a hex value for the string. And so now all we need to do is chop off. We only need the last 6 characters, and that's where we can utilize substring. So applying one more method to there, and that's the substring. And we want to take back the last 6, which effectively generates a random hex value. And all we need to do is add in the hash, and that's going to give us a random background color. So that's how that formula works. And it's a really effective way to generate a random color within one line of code. Also adding in a border. So border, we can set it up just as we would with our regular CSS, where we can set border solid black. So make sure we get all of those parameters in there. And also want to track in when the start time is. So whenever our element gets created, we want to have a value for that. And then lastly, let's add it to the visible area. So using container append child, we can append that div to the main container element. So that will make it visible on the page. So let's refresh and hit start game. And then there we've got our element showing up and popping up. So coming up next, we need to make this clickable so that we can track how long it takes the user to click the element as it shows up. So that's coming up next. So go ahead and practice applying style properties to your element that you've just created using create element. Add in some objects to it, and also take a look at using math random, because it gives you the ability to randomize some of these values and make them different all the time. So now we can see that these elements that are popping up are always going to look different. And you can play around with some of these numbers to make them bigger or smaller to really see what different effects you can get out of the math random. So coming up next, we're going to add interaction to that element.